The views and opinions expressed on this program do not reflect the company, owners, management, staff, clients, or partners.
Greetings and welcome to another episode of Bermuda's Feel Good Early Morning Show. Good day, Bermuda. I'm Terri Tuku alongside Jacky Lambert, and we are ready to bring you some feel good vibes this morning. Our feel good topic of the day is the importance of empowering passionate young Bermudians of the next generation. And for that conversation, we are going to bring Ryan Robinson Perinchief, the founder of Future Leaders Bermuda, into the studio so that we can have a talk about that. Our feel good vibe of the day is the recipient of this year's The Pro Fellowship. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Chart it to my head, not my heart if I didn't. But before we get into all of that, I want to see who is tuned in with us. So before we go to the comments, do make sure you share this, you retweet it, you send it in your WhatsApp family group chats, because I know y'all got some aunties over there that are up first thing in the morning that can tune in and watch us. Let's see who is in with us this morning. We have Sean Smith, as always. Good morning to you, Sean Smith. Let us know in the comments if you are here with us, because we're going to jump right in to our feel good warm up, which for some folks might get us started on like a somber, sour note. But I want to know, how do you feel about Bermuda's loss to Haiti yesterday? Jacky and I are definitely going to share our thoughts and opinions on that, but we do want to hear that from you as well. And I see that we have Kenton Trot. Good morning to you, Kenton. Thanks for joining us this morning. So Jack, how do you feel about Bermuda's loss to Haiti yesterday?
I don't know, like anybody could lose on any given day, right? So as long as they go out there, they play at their best, they put 100% in, there is nothing more that we can ask for them. These guys are, I saw somebody tweet saying that Haiti's team, none of them actually training locally. They're not all in Haiti, they're all out in the playing pros. So I think for how well Bermuda carried themselves and handled the game, I'm proud of them.
I agree. I definitely agree. I think one of the things, I do remember the tweet that you're talking about, you're referring to, and it was interesting because the person mentioned that, well, the announcer said that, you know, all of the Haiti team play professionally. They don't play domestically in Haiti, which means that there's a different level of skills that their players have than our players, where we have a good mix of, you know, we do have some professional players. We have a good mix of local players. And some of these guys are relatively new to the international stage when it comes to playing. So they haven't been able to, you know, be in front of large crowds like that and have to perform on such a level. So I definitely think that they held their own. We got a girl, thanks to Nikki Wells for that girl, because I was a little nervous when it was 3-0. I was like, hold on. We need to put something in the net. So definitely grateful to Nikki for getting us on the board, getting us out of the starting blocks. So let us know in the comments what you thought about Bermuda's loss to Haiti. I wouldn't say it's definitely a complete 180 to how we played against Barbados. I will say that.
I mean, at least we got one and it wasn't like 8-1 or 11-0. That's
what I'm saying. I'm definitely glad that he got us on the scoreboard and that it wasn't. I think they held their own though. So to keep Haiti, a professional team, to just 3 goals, well, 4, excuse me. At the end, it was 4-1. But to keep them to 3 goals at the half it's definitely something they should, you know, be proud of. Sure, we took the L, but we definitely got to. We didn't get a pepper in. We didn't take a cutty. It was definitely they definitely held their own.
I hope they take it as not just like a loss, but a learning loss. So if they go back, they watch the replays, they see where they went wrong and make the adjustments for the next time that they compete. Because a lot of us athletes, we tend to get caught up in the emotional side, and then we have the country behind us. So we don't actually process the loss the way that we should. And I hope that the coaches and everybody sit down and keep encouraging them to push forward instead of, making them depressed.
Yeah.
Standoffish would be better.
Absolutely. So as you're joining in, do let us know in the comments how you feel about Bermuda's loss to Haiti yesterday. We did lose 4-1, but it's okay because our boys definitely held their ground. They stood, well, it's not cricket, but they did stick to the wicket. They definitely didn't give up. I didn't see I didn't see a downturn in energy, because sometimes you can tell when an athlete's like, all right, forget it. I feel like they played to the very end. So I definitely commend them for that. And we do have Carmen Mitchell-Jones is joining us. Good morning to you, Carmen. As you're joining us, let us know how you felt about Bermuda's loss to Haiti yesterday, because we're going to switch gears to a similar question that we have for the audience. We want to know, what are your thoughts on sports journalism in Bermuda? Because yesterday, our team played against Haiti. Previously on Friday, they played against Barbados. And I haven't seen the article just yet around yesterday's match, so we can't speak to that just yet. But I do remember the headline for Friday's match after Nikki got us. I think he got 3 goals or 2. He got 2. He got 2 goals for us on Friday, and the headline was very interesting around just 0 to hero to get Bermuda the goals that we got on last week Friday. So we do want to know what are your thoughts on sports journalism in Bermuda, because it has recently come up again on Bermie Twitter. I've seen a lot of people having conversation around just sports journalism. A particular entity seems to be the culprit, but we'll just talk about sports journalism in general. And I see that we have a comment coming in, and what that comment is actually related to the loss to Haiti. So we'll get into that, but let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on sports journalism. So we have a comment here from Kenton Trott. He says, I am so proud of our Bermuda team. They played their hearts out every time. And I agree. I definitely agree with you, Kenton, on that. Jack, because I know you're an athlete, so you be dealing with the reporters way more than I do. What are your thoughts on sports journalism?
So let's start with the tweet. The tweet was 0 to hero, and I was scrolling through Twitter, and I saw it, and my first thing was, I can't even say it. I was just like, what the? You sat there, and you thought that this was smart to do, because when you think 0 to hero, I think of the Disney cartoon, Hercules, where Hercules wasn't able to do anything. He was clumsy, and he was just like a loser. And then all of a sudden, he's out there saving the world, and he's a hero. And I went, that's the first thing that came to my mind. And I was just like, they didn't think this through. This is going to take lashings. I don't know if they want the negative response so that they get some type of response, because maybe that's what negative PR is still good, but it's not right now. And I've been on both sides. I've either gotten good praise, or I've taken slams, and I'm taking slams for things that my opponent should be taking slams for, but because the way I handled it, I'm the one that gets chastised. I'm the one that gets stuck to the cross. So what are my thoughts on journalism in Bermuda? It's the same as when we were talking about Naomi Osaka. You guys, most of them aren't athletes, and if they were, they've forgotten what it was like to be in the spotlight, what it's like to put all your energy out there and then just get negative response and get pushed on when you're putting all your blood, sweat, and tears into a sport to succeed. It's discouraging to see stuff like that, but then of course it also lights a fire under your backside to prove them wrong, but you don't need that. You already have all the other pressures, so they need to do better, honestly. But I could talk about this all day.
As you're joining us, let us know in the comments, what are your thoughts on sports journalism in Bermuda? We're going to get into a quick commercial break before we have our conversation with Ryan Robinson Perinchief of Future Leaders Bermuda.
Same smooth sounds, different name. BCG Radio, home of Bermuda's most engaging morning talk shows, The Daily Hour and Good Day Bermuda. Download the app available for Android and Apple devices. BCG Radio, your station for conversations and entertainment.
Welcome back to Good Day Bermuda. I'm Terri Tuku alongside Jacky Lambert. Our field goal warm-up is all about sports here in Bermuda. We're definitely talking about sports journalism as well as Bermuda's loss to Haiti. So as you're joining us, jump into the comments your thoughts on either of these topics, because we're going to switch gears a bit to our field goal topic of the day, which is empowering passionate young Bermudian leaders. We have Ryan Robinson Perinchief, who's going to be joining us in the studio really quickly, shortly, in like less than 60 seconds. I just want to let you know, if you don't know who Ryan is, he is the founder of Future Leaders Bermuda, as well as one of the founding members of Ruse's book club. He has done so much in his short lifespan thus far, and I'm super excited. I'm super inspired. I actually low-key fangirl over Ryan sometimes. He followed me back on Instagram, and I'm like, okay, I've made it. I definitely feel like I'm one of those people now. So we're gonna bring Ryan into the conversation. Good morning to you, Ryan.
Good morning, Terri. Good morning, Jacky. How you guys doing?
Good, thanks.
We're good. So Ryan, I wanted to start with Future Leaders Bermuda. Can you tell us what inspired you to start that, as well as who inspired you to become the person that you are today?
Sure. So one of the first things we actually learn and teach the students in Future Leaders Bermuda is that service is not simple. And that basically has to do with the idea that there are often more than one reason why. There's often more than one reason why we do the things that we do, especially when it comes to work in the community. Sometimes it's for selfish reasons. Maybe you feel a sense of duty, or oftentimes you're projecting. So when I started Future Leaders, it definitely had to do with a lot of different things. The main reason was that there were a lot of young people in the community that I felt were being affected and not affecting things. So I think at the time, gang violence, this was in 2017, was still a very hot topic issue. There were a lot of other concerns around poverty and the rising cost of living. And young people weren't really being included in the discussion. And so the idea behind Future Leaders was to sort of create a space where young people can understand the issues, but not from a position of feeling disempowered, not from a position of feeling like there were all of these things going wrong in the community, but actually connecting young people with their community and getting them to identify and sort of see themselves in the issues so that they can then be a part of the solution. And I started it while I was at university. So I think some of the other reasons had to do with maybe my experience while I was in the UK, some other things that I had seen going on in the community, as well as just my general desire to, I guess, find a way to see how can I contribute, and be a part of the solution. As for who inspired me, I definitely had a strong upbringing from my parents, who were already sort of involved in community work and politics. I mean, my father grew up in the PLP, and then my mother has often been involved in the Adventist Church with a lot of community givebacks and activities and things like that. So I've definitely been impacted heavily by both of them, as well as just a wealth of people in the community who support and invested in me. And so I wanted to find a way to give that back and pay it forward.
So why was starting this not just important to you, but also it's very important for our country, right? But why? Can you explain to us why?
Yeah, I mean, it's essential. I think there are so many things in Bermuda today where young people just aren't a part of the conversation, right? And I remember growing up, I was born in 96, and I remember the earlier years of my life, you would go, 5 years without a murder or without some serious, incident of crime. And that changed around the 2000s, right? When we had that spate of gun violence and gang violence. In addition, we have so many other issues affecting the country with wealth inequality and a lot of discussions about how, for example, Black Bermudians make less than white Bermudians despite having higher qualifications in the same sort of job title. So all sorts of different things where these things just weren't being talked about, and where they were discussed, I think they were discussed at a very surface level. And so the aim of Future Leaders was to sort of provide an intensive environment where we could actually look at these issues critically, right? The aim was you should be able to have teenagers and young people that can have these conversations and talk about gang violence, and not just talk about it and say, it's unfortunate or it's senseless, but actually make sense of it, understand why these things happen. And that way they can sort of, growing up, the aim is that you have a generation of people that are better equipped than the last to actually discuss these issues and be prepared to tackle them, right, and face them head on.
Agreed. And I do just want to remind the audience, if you have any questions for Ryan, if you have any comments for Ryan, do drop them in the comments because we will bring them on screen. And I actually wanted to kind of continue on this idea of the previous generations. Have you noticed any pushback, any challenges with trying to engage the previous generations in educating the current younger generation? Because Jacky and I are both, we're millennials. We're older millennials, I guess you could say now. And so we do find that it can be a little bit difficult to bridge that gap because what we are so used to doing, how we communicate is like completely different from those that came before us. And then you get this communication barrier. So how have you been able to maybe overcome that or just find a way to work around that?
A lot of patience. I think I don't like to both sides things, but I really think that when it comes to the generation gap, it's a both sides issue. I think in some ways the older generation get a lot of flack unfairly because it's framed in a way where, they're not giving us a space, right? Or that, they don't want to pass the mantle down. I think with every generation, you have that vanguard of people, right, who really go above and beyond and do that work. And I think of people like the late Laverne Ferber, the late Dr. Eva Hudson, and then a lot of other people who aren't out there and don't have sort of big roles, like at least on the public face, but have done a whole lot of work, right? More work than I think our generation has ever been willing to do when it comes to sort of reading those books, being in the trenches, doing things behind the scenes that, you won't see on TV, right? And I think the older generation has a lot of those people. You're talking about people that built our institutions, whether that's the PLP, the BIU, our community clubs. And so there are so many people out there, I think they were willing to go so much further than I think we have been willing to go. Even when you think about things like the Bermuda riots, right? Like when those people who we talk about as being in the older generation were our age, like in their 20s, I mean, people say that I'm doing a lot and I self-examine that, right? Because when you look at what I'm doing compared to what Paulu was doing or, the Black Berets were doing in their 20s, they were going so much further than even what I've done. And so on one hand, I think, we have to keep that in mind and look and see like, where's our selflessness in that? But then on the other hand, I also think, there could be some more space made for young people and actually nurturing and passing the mantle down, because I think there are a lot of things that we can learn and there are a lot of things that we have to contribute, right? Our generation is more educated or at least more schooled. We have a lot more creativity, I think, in certain areas. And, even with like technology, right? We're more tech savvy, we're more innovative. And so I think if you're able to bridge that and sort of combine the best of those generations, I think we go a lot further.
Absolutely agree.
So I see the passion, I hear the passion, and I get it because it sounds like your upbringing was similar to mine. But no matter how passionate we are, there's always going to be some roadblocks. And Terri obviously brought up a few of them. But what are some other roadblocks and challenges you've had to face since launching this foundation?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but I have to say it because it's just the reality. The biggest challenges I faced have been from oftentimes the people in the community that you think would help you the most, or the people that you're trying to serve and work with. And I mean, it doesn't make me, feel like, oh, why do I do this? I mean, in my worst state, right, in my lower self, I definitely feel that way from time to time. But I mean, it's far outnumbered by the people out there who actually are providing the encouragement and giving you a platform and supporting you and just shooting you that message of encouragement. But as far as roadblocks, I mean, I think a lot of the roadblocks I've had have been either people not taking me seriously as a young person. You go and you knock on somebody's door and they're like, who are you? What you say your name was, and those sorts of things. This idea that you have to sort of come correct and pay your dues and build up a long rapport with organizations and people in order to actually sit down and do something that could ultimately benefit them. And then I guess another part is just, I think the everyday issues that people sort of raise whenever they're trying to start a business or work with government or get things done in the community, which is that you just have a mentality of certain people where if they can say no, they'll say no. If they can block something, they'll block something. Like if they can exercise that little bit of power to just make your job that much harder, then there are some people that do that. And I don't want to focus on that because, like I said, the vast majority of people that I've worked with, and I think that's one reason that Future Leaders has been so successful, is because there are people out there that see what's being done and they want to support and they really want to be a part of that. But where I have had roadblocks is definitely that one person, where you're trying to get something done and you just face red tape and roadblock after roadblock. So you just have to sort of be persistent, right? And try and be patient and try and see their point of view and just work with them, right? And trying not to give them any excuse to interrupt what you're trying to do, because you have to focus on the bigger picture.
That whole roadblock of the red tape and bureaucracy, it really gets under my skin, because I know, like, not only can you see it from the outside looking in, but how disruptive that can be, and how that can be so discouraging for someone that's just genuinely trying to do something good with their time here on this earth. And it bothers me when people say it, because it's like one of those things where it's like, when you want to be the change and you can't be the change because people that look like you are keeping you from being the change, you're kind of just like, man, is it worth it? And then, but to your point, it is great to have, even if it's that one text message, that one WhatsApp, that one tweet that says, you know what, keep going, or here's X because I want to help you kind of keep moving. I feel like these conversations are why we want to have them, because I know there's people out there like Jacky and I, like yourself, Ryan, that want to do more, but because they hear about, well, I didn't get this grant, or it takes 20 pages for me to apply for this one little thing, they don't want to do it. So I'm grateful to you for, what you do. And I do have a question here from the audience. We have a question from Sean Smith. He wants to know, where do you see Future Leaders Bermuda in 10 years?
Yeah, so thank you for that. That's a question that I have been facing over the past 2 years, at least before COVID. We actually spent the past 2 years drafting a strategic plan. And when I say we, it was just a lot of me sitting in a room and thinking, what's happening in Future Leaders. One of the things that I've learned just from my studies here and talking with other people, so I'm doing a public policy degree at Oxford Uni, and there are a lot of other people out here who are just so inspiring and have done so much more with so much less. And from my conversations with some of them, one of the things that I had to understand was that the thing that's unique about Future Leaders or any youth organization, as opposed to another charity, is that in order for it to remain what it is, as a youth organization, it has to be youth-led. And keeping in mind that we're all just getting older every year, I think there's going to come a point where it's no longer youth organization if I'm at the front. And that's difficult for me, because I think when we make these organizations and we build them from the ground up, we expect that we'll always, be there forever, right? And so the past 2 years and the next 3 years, we actually did a strategic plan, which is on our website, our plan for 2020 to 2023. And the plan for the next 3 years is I want my team, what we're going to do at the end of this year is everybody has to select at least 2 people that are within the organization that have gone through Future Leaders, and they need to start training them to take over. So when you ask me, where do I see Future Leaders in 10 years? I don't think that's for me to decide, because if it's going to be a youth organization, I'm really looking at those students who did the program in 2017, 2018, 2019, the ones that are coming in this year, to sort of take my place. And wherever they want to go, whatever's important, whether that's climate change or the environment or whatever new issue, is affecting young people at the time, I think I have to sort of step back and just be willing to support them and see where it goes. But I know that's a bit of a runaround answer, but in short, I really think we have to stay grassroots. There was a time when I wanted us to have like a big fancy building and be like one of these big mega charities. And I think everybody has an idea when they start an organization that it just kind of grows endlessly and expands sort of eternally. But I think I'm happy with the position that we're in right now, and finding the right balance between being grassroots, but also having a level of flexibility and resources to sort of shift and be responsive to the community. And I think we should stay on that path based on whatever the young people at the time sort of want to do with it.
That's awesome. You have no idea how important it is, everything that you said, because I grew up in a family that we used to do tennis in Bermuda. We still do tennis in Bermuda. What am I talking about? But the grassroots program starts, and then as the sport grows again, you constantly want to make sure you check in with those that all of this is for and it affects. So you say that you want to pass the torch on for the people that you're helping. That is the smartest move for you to do for this to succeed and for it to continue to grow. So if you do want that building, you're probably going to end up getting it because they're going to want it. So as long as you're able to let go of the reins, because people, they try to control it. This is your baby. This is what you want. And you got to remember that this is for the the kids, the juniors. So as it goes down the chain, you have to loosen the reins a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tight balance, right? Because you want to protect it, right? And you don't want it to be compromised as far as the original mission. But at the same time, I'm talking to, so like, I'll call some names like Sion Tatum, Miss Mackenzie Curl-Tuckett. Like, these are people that went through the program in 2017 and 18, and that are like, what's next? Like, how can I get involved? And so I'm pushing them now. If you ever speak to them, I think those are both good people for you to have on the show possibly. But, I push them. I'm like, look, you guys have to learn everything that it took to make this what it is. You need to know how to use the website. You need to make the registration forms. You need to know how to write a press release. You need to know how to do the accounts. Like, so we're sort of offloading that on them. And I'm like, you guys are going to step up, because I'm not going to be here forever. Right. So that's definitely what we're working on.
No, it's smart because in Bermuda, you always see the third generation of taking, say, a house, a start of a house. So the grandparents, they built the house, they bought the land, they did everything. The second generation, they were a part of the process. And then you get to the third generation and you want to make life easier and easier, but you got to make sure that you keep them a part of the process, because if they have sweat in the game, they have blood in the game, they're not just going to let it just wilt away. They're going to be like, this is my legacy too. You got to make sure this lasts forever. So as long as you're instilling that in them, it will last. You'll be fine. But I think
not
Terri
only that, right? But no, go ahead, Terri.
Oh, no, I was just going to say having a succession plan is very key for any organization, but I think it's even more key for a youth organization because, to your point, as we get older, we age, we look at life differently, we've experienced different things, so we have a different opinion of how something should be approached. And so even we're all young still, like we're in our 30s, late 20s, but there are certain things I see on Twitter that I cringe at. And I'm like, if I was in my 20s, I would probably be right there with them, just like popping off. But now in my 30s, I'm a little cautious about what I say. So I think having a succession plan, well, yes, she's not. She's very unfiltered. But it's just the way I think about things has changed over time, even though I'm still technically young. And I just think having a succession plan, no matter where you are in life, is key, because you don't then feel like you have to be 80 something still doing Future Leaders Bermuda. Like, that doesn't seem like it makes sense. But continue.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to use Jacky's example of the houses, right? And sort of passing things on to the next generation. And it ties into what you said as well, Terri. But I think one of the things that is lost sometimes on us as a community, particularly the Black Bermudian community, is the power of institutions, right? So when Jacky, you talked about houses being passed on, it's not just about that family, right? It's not just about, the young people in that generation learning how to manage the house and having a stake in the game. But the thing that builds communities is our institutions. It's about, the ability to grow and pass things on. When you look at things like the PLP and the BRU, right? These are institutions that are less than 100 years old. And when I see on Twitter, people are like, the younger generation don't really care about it anymore. For me, it's unfortunate, right? Because, when you look at a place like Oxford, they've been through multiple plagues, multiple pandemics. And if one of the first things they said when I first came out here was like, we've done this before and we'll be all right. Like, there's no concern at all about the future of the institution. And I think we as a people have to get to that point too, right? Like, where you see future leaders in 10 years, like, I just hope it exists. I hope that there are other people that care about it. I hope that, it's something that other people are willing to take on, not just for the sake of future leaders and not just for my sake, but because this has a potential to be an institution in our community, right? That contributes and builds towards other things. So I think we have to, recognize how it ties into the bigger picture as well.
Totally agree. I actually want to bring in this question from our audience member, Sean Smith. He asks, do you have any partnerships with any of our brothers and sister islands from the South?
So that's actually one of our plans to sort of build those linkages. We have sent students, we've been around for just about 4 years now, and it started out as a summer program, and we're trying to expand it so that we can do some cultural exchanges. We had a partnership with a school in the United States, which was actually brought about by the U.S. consulate, where they go and they learn about different development goals, and the students, get their, they sort of whet their appetite and living on their own and being by themselves for 3 weeks. But one of the things that I definitely want to do is build some linkages in West Africa and the Caribbean. I've actually taken trips. I've taken a trip to Trinidad and Tobago to sort of do some exploration there. We had some plans to announce a partnership with an organization there, which would allow our students to be able to maybe take like a summer trip and do a retreat, learn a little bit more about the Caribbean sort of linkages. That's a personal goal of mine as well, is to get Bermuda to recognize its role in the Caribbean. And so that's definitely a priority for me. And then the second linkage in the South was potentially another cultural exchange with West Africa, particularly in Ghana, in order to explore pre-colonial Black history, which I think is important, especially as people living in the West, understanding, where we were before slavery and before some of the traumatic events that now impact our community and tie into things like gang violence and mental health and all the rest. So, I mean, COVID has interrupted that a bit, but we definitely have plans to get our kids just meeting and connecting and being pen pals with people in those communities as well.
Love that. Let me know how I can help. That's one. But two,
we'll talk for sure.
I got some contacts for you. But we talked about children are our future. We talked about, exchanging with other schools and stuff. But let's talk about our school system in Bermuda and how maybe you're working with them to try to get this maybe somehow mandated that they can actually be a part of your foundation, as well as we know the school system's a mess. So how can we fix it?
So two points there. One was getting future leaders involved, and one was addressing our education system. So the first thing, as far as getting future leaders involved, I think when you're a charity, another question that you have is whether you should exist, right? I personally don't think that all types of charities are charities that should exist forever. I think we have to be about structural change and systemic change. And so when it comes to future leaders, I love to see us continue on as a mentorship and an empowerment organization. But when it comes to the actual curriculum and the things that we teach our students over the course of the initial 3 weeks, my aim is to make it obsolete, honestly. I don't want us to partner with the schools to deliver that educational material. I want the schools to have this as a basis. It needs to be a basic thing, right? Like every child should understand why gangs exist. Every child should understand that there is inequality in the world. Everybody should be forced to consider and examine their role in oppression and hierarchy and power and hegemony. So, when it comes to the linkages with schools, we have a great partnership with Berkeley. That's where we actually base our program every year. And when it comes to selecting the students for our program, every school gets an invitation to have at least one child involved, one student involved. But the end goal for that is actually to make our curriculum obsolete, because it should just be something that's in our system overall. Now, I don't know if you want to cut me off there, but I can talk about the bigger picture of education if you want as well. But I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
You actually, I asked the question, but I already had my opinion in my head, and you shared the same sentiment. So I'm sitting here like, wow, that's that.
Yeah, but, I totally agree. And like Jacky and I both went to Berkeley, and we both experienced like a half a semester. Like, so in S1, you have Bermuda Social Studies, but it was like for the first, I guess, semester. So for like from September to December, you did Bermuda Social Studies. And then the second part of the year, you would move on to like World Social Studies, World History, and then by S3, or S2, S3, you were doing like American history, you were learning about everyone else's history. And we have shared previously that bothered us, even though, and it bothered us when we learned about the whole Wantley story and just like how we came to become the public school for Black Bermudians. And then for us to not even be able to like learn it for the entire 4 years, because there's no way we learned everything that we were supposed to learn in that half a semester. And then coming out of it on the other side, keeping the end in view, you realize the end was never in view from a historical perspective, because a lot of the information that we had to learn was through conversations with people like yourself, or like having a family member who was a part of the theater boycott who shared that story with the family so that you knew about it. And so I love that you want to make the organization obsolete, not from a perspective of like it doesn't need to be because the passion is gone or we don't want to do it anymore, but because this should be something that no matter what school you go to in Bermuda, you should know this history. So I love that.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that as far as learning things like about the history of Berkeley, because when you talk about education, and I mean, it was a big question you asked, Jacky, because education has so many different moving parts, right? But for me, I know government's going about the education reform now and, considering closing certain schools and implementing the signature school curriculum. For me, I think the most important thing, at least when it comes to what government can do, is the curriculum, because you can have new buildings, you can have mold-free schools. You can have the millions of dollars that are pouring into the education system. But if the things that the students are learning do not align with their cultural history, they don't align and connect in a way that allows them to take ownership over the community. If we're just preparing students to be shipped off and sort of, come back and work in these corporate office fields and corporate jobs without any sort of awareness of, where it all came from, then, to me, that's the big thing that we need to be focusing on. And I think also, we mentioned that, some concerns that the education system in Bermuda needs a lot of work. I think it's also important to look at it in context. The entire world has this problem, right? Like public schools all over the world are having what they call the learning crisis, which is where historically the big challenge, especially in developing countries, was getting students enrolled in school, right? Like not every child was able to even go to school. And now, that's been mostly addressed. And the biggest issue is students are in school, but they're not learning. And so I think that requires a bigger question beyond what government can do and beyond the education reform about the way that we actually view education in our communities and what it's used for. Right now, it's very much used as a filtering mechanism. Berkeley did great things for me. I have very little complaints about my experience, but I think that's also a part of the problem because I was already there. I was already at that level, right? So education really functions as a mechanism where as the years progress, you get to a smaller and smaller pool of people who are actually making it and shining through. And by the end, you end up with a smaller percentage of students that are considered successful or coming out on top or doing okay. And I think that's what we have to address, making education work for everybody, right? Rather than just one that filters out sort of the weaker students, quote unquote, and then just leaves everybody else to their own devices.
That's such a great analogy because to your point, I was also one of the successful students, but then I always would look at my friends that weren't in that category and I used to feel bad. And I would do like some really probably not great things back in the day. Like I would like let my test sheet just sit there on the side and turn my head away. Not because I wanted them to cheat their way through, but because I understood that they didn't learn like me and I didn't want them to kind of be a number, a statistic, because then that only means that the entire community later on is going to have to try to help this person in a way that we didn't necessarily have to if we just focused on what was going on at that time. Because it could have just been something very simple as they just wanted a conversation with a Black male or something like that. And they didn't know how to say that without aggression because they've always seen aggression. And that's just like one scenario, one story. There's like hundreds of other different reasons as to why our children are at, those different levels that they're at. So Jacky and I could definitely go on about this conversation all day. I know me personally, because I'm definitely passionate about the next generation. But as we wrap up, Ryan, I do want to ask you, how can anyone that maybe wants to join the team, if they want to donate or even sign up someone, well, you did mention about the invitation, but is there a way for children that don't get invited to participate? How can they do that? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, we're still working on that because I have to keep in mind that, we have a team of people and everybody's doing multiple things. And I don't want to stretch them and push them too far, especially in light of a pandemic, right? And people being expected to have the same level of productivity and performance despite working under very stressful circumstances. So, what I would say in the meantime is if people want to support, definitely shoot me an email, reach out. I would challenge people to think about what skill and what expertise they think they can contribute and what they're passionate about. And even if it's not Future Leaders, like just find somewhere out there, find another institution, find another organization that's doing things that you appreciate and support, and just see what they need. It might be, for us Future Leaders, like it might just be, getting the word out there, right? Or like helping to encourage and support us, or at least giving us opportunities as far as our young people. If there's a speaking engagement, if you're having a workshop, Terri, I know you do financial literacy and we still have to connect. If there's a project or a workshop that you're doing where you think having young people in the room would be a good thing for them, just shoot us an email, and we can pass it on and share it with our students. I think just having those linkages and those connections would go a long way for us, as well as the young people, as well as your organization,
Absolutely. Connections are literally it. That's definitely a theme for this generation. Is like, how can we connect and make it easier on everyone, right? Because like you mentioned, everyone has their own skill set, their expertise. So Ryan, we're getting close on time. We do appreciate you joining us today. We're going to have a quick commercial break. Actually, let us know in the comments your thoughts on our conversation with Ryan, because if y'all really like this conversation, we're definitely going to bring him back because he does other things. There's still the book club that we could talk about. There's so much we could talk about with Ryan. So thank you once again for joining us this morning, Ryan.
Thank you so much for having me. I mean, it was a pleasure. I really enjoyed speaking with both of you. I think for the first time, actually. So we'll have to connect again. But thank you for picking my brain. And I mean, this is encouraging for me as well. So I really appreciate it. And thanks to everybody that was watching and listening.
Perfect. Thank you.
Same smooth sounds, different name. BCG Radio, home of Bermuda's most engaging morning talk shows, The Daily Hour and Good Day Bermuda. Download the app available for Android and Apple devices. BCG Radio, your station for conversations and entertainment.
And we are back. Let us know in the comments your thoughts on our conversation with Ryan on empowering a very passionate next generation of Bermudian young leaders. We're going to get right into our Feel Good Vibe of the day, which is to celebrate Treasure Tenick. She was chosen as the 2021 DePro Fellow with a $50,000 award to fund her studies over 2 years. She is going for a master's degree in drama. Do make sure you check out our Twitter account at Good Day Bermuda or our Facebook page for a link to the full story, which is courtesy of burnews.com. We hope that today's Feel Good Vibe has you ready to make it a great one to celebrate any students, anyone in your life that is doing amazing things. I'm Terri Tuku alongside Jacky Lambert. We trust we'll see you tomorrow for another Feel Good conversation. Same time, same place. Until the next episode, peace and have a good day, Bermuda.